Titanic, the iconic vessel once deemed unsinkable and a symbol of opulence and pride, tragically succumbed to the frigid clutches of the North Atlantic Ocean following a collision with an iceberg on its maiden voyage. The disaster, resulting in the loss of more than 1,500 lives, has left an indelible mark on our collective consciousness. Yet, the Titanic's calamity conceals an even deeper layer of sorrow, an intricate web of unfortunate circumstances converging in a cruel twist of fate on that frightful night. So, join us as we unveil 10 bone-chilling facts about this historic tragedy. The iceberg's origins. The iceberg that sealed the Titanic's tragic fate wasn't just your run-of-the-mill chunk of ice. No, it was the result of some rather peculiar weather conditions that unfolded for years before the ill-fated voyage. Researchers from the University of Sheffield have pieced together that the iceberg, which became the Titanic's nemesis, was born during a spell of warm, moist weather. This climatic anomaly weakened glaciers, making them more susceptible to breaking off. The iceberg that eventually crossed paths with the Titanic was a colossal behemoth, stretching 400 feet in length and tipping the scales at a whopping 2 megatons. Against this gargantuan iceberg, the Titanic had little chance. It crumpled over 100 meters of the ship's hull as if it were mere paper. The rest, as they say, is history. Titanic wreck foretold. Here's a fascinating twist in literary history. Imagine this. There's a novella entitled The Wreck of the Titan, or Futility, penned by Morgan Robertson, and it boasts some incredibly uncanny resemblances to the real-life tragedy of the RMS Titanic. Initially published as Futility in 1898, it underwent revisions and was renamed in 1912. The plot centers around the British ocean liner called the Titan, which meets its demise in the North Atlantic after colliding with an iceberg. Sound eerily familiar? People were astounded by the striking parallels between the fictional Titan and the actual Titanic, which tragically sank 14 years later. In fact, after the Titanic disaster, the novella was reissued with a few adjustments, such as changes to the ship's gross tonnage. Here's the real kicker. This novella was written before anyone had even dreamt up the Titanic. Yet the similarities are mind-boggling. Both ships met their watery end in April following iceberg collisions in the North Atlantic, and neither carried enough lifeboats for all the passengers. The Titan, just like the Titanic, might have survived the head-on iceberg collision, but their glancing encounters caused catastrophic damage. Astonishingly, there are even resemblances in terms of the ship's size, speed, and life-saving equipment. The engineers. Without a shadow of a doubt, the passengers and crew aboard the Titanic that fateful night displayed remarkable courage in the face of an unimaginable tragedy. However, among them, a group of individuals stands out of their extraordinary valor: the engineers. Although every engineer on board met the same tragic fate as the rest of the Titanic's passengers, their unwavering bravery on that fateful April night in 1912 is a testament to human courage that can never be forgotten. As panic spread and the rush for lifeboats ensued, these engineers remained steadfast in their duty, demonstrating remarkable courage until the very last moments. They toiled relentlessly, striving to maintain the ship's power for as long as humanly possible. In doing so, they provided everyone else on board with the best possible chance of escape and survival. Indeed, it takes an exceptional level of bravery to willingly sacrifice one's own life to secure the survival of hundreds of others. If this isn't the very embodiment of courage, it's difficult to fathom what is. 1,000 bodies. While many of the Titanic's victims have been identified, the grim reality is that not all of them could be accounted for. Among the tragic toll of approximately 1,500 people who perished during the ship's fateful sinking, the remains of over 1,000 individuals were never recovered. The bodies that were located were primarily retrieved by the vessel's dispatch to the disaster area in the days following their tragic event. Identification of the recovered bodies was a painstaking process, often relying on personal belongings, clothing, and any available documents found on the victims. The efforts to identify the victims were extensive, but despite these endeavors, not all the recovered bodies could be conclusively matched with their identities. In more recent times, advancements in forensic science, genealogy, and DNA testing have been instrumental in shedding light on the identities of some previously identified victims. Nonetheless, despite these remarkable efforts, there remain some individuals from the Titanic's tragedy whose identities may never be fully known. The actual villain. What if we shared a fascinating twist in the tale of the Titanic's ill-fated voyage? It's not just about bad luck or navigation mishaps. Instead, it involves an optical illusion. Historian Tim Moulton's recent study delves into this intriguing theory. Brace yourself for the unexpected. The Titanic might have met its tragic end due to a mirage. This peculiar phenomenon is known as superrefraction, a term that describes the bending of light creating mirages. That's right, the Titanic's demise might have been attributed to a mirage. Strikingly, several ships in the vicinity that night observed this phenomenon, but no one comprehended the danger it concealed. Surprisingly, both the Titanic and the nearby cargo ship Californian failed to spot the iceberg in time. The atmosphere that night was in a state of unsettling instability, with layers of cold air nestled between warmer ones. This atmospheric condition generated a deceptive horizon, causing everything to appear different from reality. As the Titanic desperately fired distress signal rockets into the night sky, these rockets appeared significantly lower due to its mirage. When the Californian crew observed these rockets, they mistakenly assumed they belonged to a departing ship and didn't consider coming to the Titanic's rescue. It's yet another layer to the Titanic's tragic story, revealing that unforeseen factors, even optical illusions, played a crucial role in the catastrophic fate. Imposter funnel. Now, if you've ever glimpsed at the movie scenes or photos of the Titanic, those massive 81.5-foot tall smokestacks likely caught your attention. Each of those colossal smokestacks weighed an astonishing 60 tons, and they weren't just your ordinary upright stacks. No, they are positioned at a dramatic 30-degree angle from the ship's deck, billowing out a staggering 100 tons of soot into the atmosphere every single day. But here's a delightful twist. Despite having 4 of these Titanic smokestacks, only 3 were dedicated to the essential task of venting smoke and fumes from the ship's immense boilers. Now, what about the 4th smokestack, you may wonder? Well, it wasn't just an extravagant ornament. Its purpose was to enhance the Titanic's majestic and awe-inspiring appearance. While it didn't primarily serve the function of venting boiler smoke like its companions, it wasn't merely for show either. The ingenious minds on board decided to put it to practical use, employing it to vent steam from the ship's kitchens and provide much-needed ventilation to the crew quarters. Originally a mail ship. Indeed, it's an interesting historical tidbit that the Titanic had a role in delivering mail for the British Postal Service. The ship held the prestigious designation of being a Royal Mail Ship, RMS, a title exclusively granted to British merchant vessels engaged in carrying mail under contract with the British Postal Service. On board the Titanic were over 3,000 sacks of mail, containing millions of individual pieces of mail, ranging from letters and postcards to parcels. These pieces of mail were destined for various locations, including the United States and Canada. Unfortunately, when the Titanic tragically sank, the majority of this mail met the same fate as the ship itself was lost at sea. Metal-eating bacteria. Over the past century, the Titanic has been silently deteriorating at the ocean depths, and scientists have made a remarkable discovery. The ship's hull is now covered in metal-eating bacteria, and these tiny organisms are gradually consuming what was once considered an unsinkable vessel. To add to this high salt concentration in the ocean has led to extensive corrosion. As a result, many of the objects inside the ship are now coated in a layer of rusticles, which are the formations that these metal-consuming microbes create after feeding on the ship's hull. Furthermore, the Titanic's wooden components have not escaped the relentless forces of nature either. Mollusks have feasted on nearly all the wood on board the ship. This means that beneath the waves, all that remains is the rusty metal shell of the Titanic, slowly decomposing and vanishing into the depths of the ocean. Lifeboats. Now, this tale is nothing short of astonishing. Initially, the ship's grand design included a whopping 64 lifeboats, but fate took an ironic twist, leaving them with a mere 20. And the reason? They didn't want the ship's deck to appear cluttered. Talk about a stroke of bad luck. So, when the Titanic encountered the fateful iceberg and began its tragic descent into the icy depths, it became painfully clear that the available lifeboats wouldn't suffice. These 20 lifeboats could accommodate approximately 1,178 passengers, a fraction of the over 2,200 souls on board. What's even more distressing is that many of these lifeboats were far from being filled to capacity. In fact, some had only a handful of passengers. Take, for instance, the first lifeboat, designed to hold 65 people, yet it lowered into the water with a mere 28 people on board. People died before the voyage. Long before the Titanic set sail on its ill-fated maiden voyage, a dark shadow of misfortune seemed to cast its influence over the ship's construction. This colossal vessel took shape over a grueling 26-month period at the Harland and Wolff shipyard in Belfast, and its journey from conception to completion was marred by a series of accidents that almost seemed like a grim harbinger of the impending tragedy. Throughout the construction process, a staggering 28 serious accidents and 218 minor accidents were recorded. Astonishingly, considering the perilous nature of shipbuilding during that era, only 8 workers met their untimely demise in the process. That's all for today. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you'll be first to know when our next video drops. Thanks for tuning in.